What's happening, you guys? Welcome back to Let's Go Win podcast for Tuesday Tune-Up, where we are here to help you be happy, healthy, wealthy, and get better every single day. That is the intention, and we're definitely going to do that today. The young lady I'm going to be bringing on today has a very, her story is good. I was reading through her bio, and I thought, you know what? This is so applicable to everyone. Courtney Elmer, founder and CEO of The Effortless Life, is a renowned coach, consultant, and speaker specializing in empowering online entrepreneurs with a focus of anti-fragility and personal growth. Courtney helps her clients achieve greater income, influence, and impact, leveraging her psychology background and personal experience as a cancer survivor. She guides online business leaders in establishing effective systems, structure, and support to reach that $1 million milestone. Courtney, how are you?
I'm great, JM. Thanks for having me today. I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
As am I. And, obviously you never want to say, you see something like cancer survivor, and that's not something that you feel good about, but yet at the same time, cancer is such a huge part of our world. And I love that, really getting adversity. We're all going to face adversity, whether it's cancer or losing someone or, bankrupt. People go through all sorts of stuff. And what I love about your platform is you're like, look, we're going to grow through adversity. There's lessons to be learned. And I think you were 25 years old as a cancer survivor. You learned these lessons pretty early.
Yeah. And JM, actually, it started even earlier than that, because part of my story that I don't share as much was when I was about 19, 20 years old, sophomore in college, I was diagnosed with clinical depression, OCD, and anorexia. And this was a manifestation of just, a very rocky relationship with my mother growing up, the inability to be able to stand up for what I believe in and use my voice to take full ownership, full personal responsibility. And that was my first time in my life that I really came face to face with who is Courtney? Who does Courtney want to be? Who is she? What is she made of? And so after going through that, or should I say growing through that, I very quickly started to do well in the world. I was working corporate 9 to 5, like most of us do before we enter this world of entrepreneurship. Had the nice car, was making good money, had met the love of my life. Things were going well, right? So I assumed naively that, I've had all this growth and now, the rest of my life is going to be great. This is going to be great. It's going on a good trajectory. And then, a couple of weeks before our wedding, I had a bad sinus infection. Really hit me out of nowhere, put me in bed for a couple of days. Saw my doctor. He's like, let's run some tests, check you out. Come see me after your honeymoon, and we'll just make sure everything's good. And he sat me down 2 days after we got home from our honeymoon, and he looked me in the eye and he's like, Courtney, we got your test results back. This really falls beyond the scope of my expertise. I've got another doctor here that handles this sort of thing. She's here. And sure enough, there's a knock at the door. She comes in and she looks at me and she says, Courtney, you have thyroid cancer. And she said, the bad news is that this is pretty aggressive. You've got this mutation. We don't see it very often. We need to operate. I've cleared a spot for you on my surgery schedule next Monday. I'll see you here at 7 a.m.
Wow.
And JM, in that moment, my life stopped. It didn't change. It just stopped. And for the first time in a very long time, I had to again face who's Courtney. I thought she was now this successful person that, had all these titles and these fancy things and all the world, the way that we measure success, right? By the standards of the world. And very quickly realized that no, there's more here. There's more to grow through. And that was tough. That was tough to go through that. I mean, gosh, looking at my husband in that doctor's office that day, holding his hand like, okay, in sickness and in health, I think we're checking that box right now. Like just having that experience wasn't easy. But it did become the catalyst for now me being here doing what I do today and all the growth that has happened since then, both in the big things, those big catalyst moments that we've all experienced. Maybe it's not cancer, but like you said, maybe it's loss. Maybe it's just a very difficult personal season that you go through that affects how you're able to show up in your business. It could be a number of things, but it's also the little day-to-day stuff too. The email from that client we didn't expect and the team member that lets us know, hey, I'm moving on somewhere else, and now we got to fill that spot. Those little things, and it's about how we approach those moments in our life.
Yeah, and this is the one thing that I've noticed as a common thread amongst. I'll go with cancer survivors. Let's just start there. One of my best friends, similar timeline. I think he was 19 at the time that he also was diagnosed with cancer. And I will say his outlook on life is amazing. His perspective is, look, I've faced death and these little things aren't going to bother me. And I'm so appreciative. I'm so loving for every moment that I have. And that's the gift that is given. Now, I've never personally gone through cancer, so I can't speak to that. But I've noticed that my friends that have done it have overcome it. My mom's a cancer survivor. To overcome these things, you garner a level of perspective that I think we all, if we could infuse it into everybody, be like, don't have to go through that. But man, this is the goods that come out of it. It's pretty remarkable. And I have you seen that as well? Is that something, I mean, clearly you're sitting here talking about it, but do you notice that as well? Or is that just me? Am I taking a leap of faith here?
Yeah, I definitely noticed that. But I think it could be anything. It could be, being let go from your job that you didn't expect. It could be a car accident. Maybe it was just a fender bender, but it was something that kind of jarred you. It could be becoming a parent and just suddenly being like entrusted with this other life. And you're like, hold on a second. I'm not just responsible for me anymore. Wow. Okay. Whole new journey here. It could be a lot of those things. There's different kinds of catalyst moments. Cancer certainly is one of them. It kind of brings you to the brink. You realize how precious your life really is and how fragile it really is, which is kind of ironic given that a lot of what I talk about is about anti-fragility, and growing through what we go through, navigating adversity, navigating failure. But I think we better understand anti-fragility when we understand our own fragility and when we can understand how things are not promised. All these things that we take for granted. I live down here in New Orleans. It's 110 degrees outside and humid right now. I wake up every day. I have AC. It's wonderful. I never think about it. I'm glad I have it. But there are people in the world right now who live in 110 degrees and humidity without that. Right. And so just never, ever taking the littlest things that we have for granted. It's so easy to do, but really recognizing how fragile each and everything that we have is. And with that perspective, to your point, what a gift it is.
Yeah, anti-fragility is not a word that I use on a day-to-day basis, but I really like where you're going with this. And again, I'll use the word perspective. For instance, a video I watched today was talking about 6 things to be grateful for: having running water, having clean water, food that you were able to eat. Like, this is when you hear that first world problems. We are so blessed in so many ways. And sure, we could bitch about lots of stuff, but why? Right? And so I want to dive into anti-fragility. How did that terminology really become? Is it through these experiences that you're like, all right, don't like the fragile part, let's work on, I'm curious where you came up with this, because again, not a word that I use on a daily basis.
Right. So full transparency, I did not coin this term. There's an author by the name of Nassim Nicholas Taleb, who wrote a book a while ago called Anti-Fragile. And Taleb is someone who worked in the financial sector for a long time. He analyzed risk. He studied when things did really well, right? When things failed. And he got really curious about this, and he started to look at other systems outside of finance, business, government, schools, families, individuals, human organisms, plant organisms. And what he started to notice was that the organisms or the systems that could withstand pressure, stress, or chaos and grow because of the pressure, stress, or chaos were what he labeled as anti-fragile. And the way that he got to this term was because, he'd go around and ask people, okay, fragile, what does that mean to you? And they'd say, oh, something that breaks easily under pressure. They give examples, an egg or, something really delicate. And then he would say, okay, well, what's the opposite of fragile? And people couldn't really give him a word. It was like robust or resilient. I know in the world of entrepreneurship, we're always talking about resilience. And I used to think resilience was the end all be all. Come to find out it's not. Because resilience, yes, while it might mean that you bounce back better from crazy, chaotic things, right? Look, again, being in New Orleans when Hurricane Katrina hit, that was crazy. None of us saw that coming. And people say, oh, New Orleans is such a resilient city. Yes, we came back from that, but did we grow from it? And that's the question that anti-fragility asks. And so as I learned about this, I thought, gosh, there is no better place to really explore this concept than in the world of entrepreneurship. Because so many people out there, JM, you see it all the time. I mean, they're posting videos, they're posting content, podcast episodes. How can we succeed? How can we succeed faster? How can you get to 6 figures, 7 figures, 8 figures? What are the strategies? What are the tactics? What did you do? Okay, I'm going to do that. And it's noisy. And those strategies that work for someone else don't always work for us.
Mm.
And guess what? It's not about strategy. Nobody's talking about how do we better navigate failure as entrepreneurs. We're all talking about how to succeed, but what about the failure that's inevitable? It's going to happen. Big failures, little failures. How do we better navigate that? And so just with my background in psychology and understanding human behavior, human communication, how do we show up? How are we able to bring our best selves to our work? Sometimes we're going through a difficult time. That's hard to do. How do we navigate those times? How do we come out stronger on the other side and succeed by learning how to better navigate our failures?
Yeah, there's no doubt failure is coming. It is inevitable. It's interesting, the conversation that we're going down, because recently my son is a very competitive tennis player. And I only say that he's going through adversity right now. Literally had the worst day of his tennis career on Saturday ever. And so what I told him is, I was like, bud, I want you to be more flowing than fighting. And what I mean by that, you're talking about anti-fragility and what is something that to me can adapt, can deal with it and not break. And I was telling him, like a palm tree, 200 mile an hour, it bends over, but it doesn't break. An oak tree, that thing is going down. Water is the best example I can give. Water never loses. It just continues to find the new path, no matter what it hits up against. And so I call it flow. I'm curious how that lands with what you're really teaching, because it's something that I'm passionate about. I don't talk about it often, but it's been on my brain recently. When you talk about the anti-fragility, that's what I think of. I think of that palm tree or water, because it's getting its ass kicked all the time, but it doesn't break. It just keeps bending, changing, adapting, and it is undefeated through time. So any thoughts on that? Because I'm just, this has been something I've been talking so much about recently, and I'm passionate, but I haven't had a chance to talk to any other adults other than my son on this.
I think this is fascinating. And this is the kind of stuff that I love to explore, asking these questions. And I think looking at the natural world is a really great place to witness anti-fragility at work. So I like what you said about the water and the palm tree. I mean, certainly true. It finds a new path. It adapts. It's not impacted negatively by the fact that it has to find a new path. It just does. And so we can look at, let's say, an orchid, right? It's a very delicate, very fragile flower. I have an orchid plant on my desk right here. It hasn't done a thing the entire time that I've had it. Never even bloomed once. The leaves are green. I water it once a week. But just like a plant goes through these cycles of dormancy where things are happening under the surface, you don't see it. But then one day it's going to bloom. And I have full confidence that it will. I talk to it every day. I'm like, you're beautiful. You're capable. You can do this. You can bloom. And I'm excited for when you get there, right? I'm probably talking to it just as much myself as I'm talking to this plant. But I like to think of that, in terms of anti-fragility, because we're going to reach those seasons in our life and our business where we're dormant, where it seems like not much is happening. When the reality is, it's just not that we can't see it. It's happening within. It's happening under the surface. And there are going to be those moments where we do blossom and we do experience or reap the fruit or the benefit of the dark season that we went through. And so I think, just like a plant is very adaptable, it's also sensitive to its environment, but it's something that can adapt, has adapted through the years. It's We can think of ourselves just like a plant organism. We're a living, breathing thing. And why wouldn't we go through those same types of cycles and seasons? So often as entrepreneurs, especially, we don't want to be in the dark place. It's hard. We can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. It's confusing. It's dark. We don't want to be there. We want to be at the peak. We want to be at the pinnacle. But you can even look back through ancient history. Look at our ancient civilizations. They didn't settle at the top of the mountain. They settled in the valley because they knew it was the most fertile ground. And so I think it's interesting to have these conversations, especially in the context of business, because there is no one path to success. We know this. So just like water finds a new path, well, yeah, guess what we have to do as entrepreneurs too? And the question becomes, are you going to find the path or not? Because we get to choose how we react and respond to the adversity in our life. And so you get to co-create the path simply by choosing to let it happen, to let it unfold, to be in that flow, to be in the dark place. And I think that's a really powerful thing. It's another thing we take for granted or don't even realize. 95% of people out there aren't even aware of that deep personal power that comes in this choice that you can make.
Yeah, you used one of my favorite words, and that is choice. You have a choice in how to react. Now, you facing what you did at 19, I think you said OCD, anorexia, and there's depression.
Depression. Mm-hmm.
And then at 25, facing cancer. The mindset is not at that time like, yes, thank you so much. I'm going to learn all this really cool stuff. There's this moment, and I wrote it down, I didn't talk about it earlier, but where you said, I'm taking full responsibility, not for what happened to me, but rather what happened for me, right? I do believe that. And I call it being a victim versus being a victor. And you clearly chose to be a victor. And you said, it is my choice how I'm going to all of this. And I love that. One of my neighbors wrote a book called Thank You Cancer. And it was such an interesting take because I've said many times, fuck cancer, man. But the truth is, so many amazing lessons for cancer survivors have come from this awful disease. My question or my thought is, I want to take you back to that time at 19 and 25, because we're talking to entrepreneurs, and I know you do this on a daily basis. They're going through that dark time. And we know, look, you can't have light without dark. So you won't know, you got to go through it to see that light. What allows you to see the light, and what allowed you to, and what are you really telling your entrepreneurs when you're working with them to say, hey, someday you're going to thank the fact that you're 600 grand in debt and getting, you don't see the end of the tunnel. What's the mindset? Can you talk to that a little bit, Courtney?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny you bring this up, JM, because just yesterday I was having an Instagram conversation with someone, and they're telling me, gosh, it is just really difficult. We just had this loss in our family. We're taking on this new responsibility. I don't know where the business is going to be. I know I'm burnt out. I can't continue doing what I'm doing right now, at least not at the level that I have been doing it. I don't know what this is going to look like, 6 months from now. And the first thing I said back to them was, good for you. This is normal. I know this is hard, and it's normal. And that's the thing we have to realize, is that whatever dark moment that we're going through is a normal part of our human experience. We can't escape it. We can't avoid it. So much of us waste time and energy trying to avoid it. We don't want to be in the dark place. We try to get out of the dark place. And we're like, oh my gosh, I am $600,000 in credit card debt. What do I do? Right? And we just kind of react and we respond and we don't pause. And so your question about, how do we look for the light? The first step to see the light is to believe that it's there. If you don't believe the light is there, you're never going to see it. Or it might be a very long time, until just things naturally unfold. And finally, it's like, okay, I think I'm catching my breath, right? I'm on the other side of this dark season. So it has to do with our own belief. It has to do with, if you believe in a higher power, I believe in God, right? Like I believe that I'm on a path for a reason. And that even in the hard moments where it's hard to trust that, I choose to trust it. That's step number 1 for me. Step number 2 is belief in myself. Belief that I am capable of getting through this hard season. And very transparently, let's see, September through this end of February, early March was a very dark season in my business. A lot of personal stuff was going on. I got a call one morning, or a text rather, in our family group thread saying that 2 of our very dear friends, one of whom I had just seen weeks before and had a beautiful conversation with, had been murdered, killed in a random act of violence. Shortly after that, I lost my aunt, who was also my godmother, someone I was very close to, was a very maternal figure for me through the years. And that loss was incredibly difficult. And at the time, we had a bunch of crazy stuff going on with the team too. Things were up in the air with our business and our marketing and the direction we were headed, and just a lot of big things and a lot of little things all happening and culminating at once. And there were some times where I'm like, I'm just shutting it down. I don't even want to deal with this anymore. I'm just going to take a sabbatical. I'm going to walk away from this. And then, of course, I knew, doing what I do and standing what I stand for, I'm like, no, I can't do that. I can't do that, right? I can't just throw in the towel and walk away. This is anti-fragile at work right here, and I shared about it and I talked about it openly. Go listen to that podcast episode, and people reach out and they're like, wow, I had no idea you were going through what you were going through, but thank you for sharing that, because I'm going through X, Y, or Z, right? And this helps me feel like I'm not alone. So back to the thing about the light. There are going to be some times where you don't see it. You're just not. There's a curve in the tunnel, or it's too far ahead. We're not there yet. And we have to continue going. Just don't stop. Don't stop walking. Even if you have to crawl, but believe that the light is there and that you will see it and that you are capable of getting through this. And I think with just that deep trust in yourself, this inner knowing that you're going to be okay, that everything always has been okay, is okay, and will be okay, that you will get through this, and look back at other times in your life where you've gone through difficult things. Was it hard in the moment? Yeah. Did you come out on the other side? You sure did.
I have to ask, with the name of your company, I love it. And the emphasis on less. If people can't see this, you'll see it in the description. It's effort, and LESS is capitalized. Where are you going with that? And is it all kind of what we're talking about in terms of, you don't have to fight. When things happen, there is a moment of acceptance, and to say, okay, no problem. I'm going to choose to respond this way. But you tell me, what is effortless life? What does that mean to you? Because it's clearly very strategic, the way that is written.
Yeah, thanks for asking this question. I love talking about this. This is something that, when we were iterating all the many names of things that we could name the company, which originally, for the record, was Courtney Elmer Coaching. When I started this, I had no idea what I was doing. I'm like, let's put my name to it, But really, as we evolved and developed, this greater ethos of what we do, one of the biggest things was quite literally working with less effort and more intentionality. So it was this idea of not just going into business to just be successful and, stroke the ego and have a 7-figure business, and 6-figure months in revenue, whatever it might be. But, how do I actually create the business that I got into business to create? Because for a lot of us, we start our businesses and very quickly we're not on the path. We get into business for freedom. We get into business for flexibility, to be able to have some personal power, to have some say-so in how we want our life to go. And then sometimes we wake up and we look at our life and we realize, holy cow, I'm working a lot harder than I used to at my old job. And we get off the path. And it's easy. It's easy to get off the path. It's easy to deviate from what we're here to do. And so that, I think, just in its simplicity captures the essence of what we help people do. Yeah, we help them do it through systems, through podcasting, through many different things. Certainly by helping them become more anti-fragile and able to withstand the stresses, the pressures, the adversity of growing a business. But for the ultimate goal of being in full alignment with who we are stepping fully into our power of who we've been created to be, taking full ownership of our future and saying, this is what I'm choosing, this is what I'm doing, and finding that freedom and that fulfillment and that flow, all the good F words, right, in this journey. And realizing that when you're there, it will feel effortless. And I think that's ultimately what we all seek.
Yeah, I love the intentionality, and it's so true. Whether you're whatever, as a parent, we lose focus on that. As a business owner, you lose focus on that. I love that. I can't believe how fast this has gone, Courtney. I'm looking at the time. For those that want to connect, because Courtney is clearly, there's so much to this woman. The layers are incredible. They wanted to reach out to you, Courtney, find out, what you're doing at Effortless Life. Where's the best place to connect with you online?
Yeah, well, if you love listening to podcasts, I would love to have you listen to our show. It's Anti-Fragile Entrepreneurship. You can find it literally on any podcast player. Pick your favorite one, type it in, or type my name in. It'll pop up. Would love to have you join us there, where we explore these topics, on a much, much deeper level. And then one of the things that we didn't talk a whole lot about today, but that I do teach, and mentioned it a little bit, is helping people be seen as thought leaders and increase their visibility and leverage their time through podcasting. And so if you're someone that's watching this or listening and you're like, I've kind of toyed with the idea of launching a podcast, or maybe you've launched one that hasn't given you the results you want, and you want to have a greater impact in the world, not for your ego, but truly with the intention of helping other people. And you're kind of over this whole short form content game, where it's like, okay, post 7 times a week, 8 times a week, 10 times a week, still not getting DMs from people, still not getting any, kind of return on your time invested there. And you're trying to crack this marketing nut, right? How do I market my business more effectively? Maybe consider a podcast. And I'd love to show you what we've done for our own show to become a top 1% podcast, what we've helped over 4 dozen other coaches and consultants do to help them get in the Apple Top 100. And I teach a workshop on a regular basis. It's totally free. There's no pitch. This is just me teaching what we've done that's worked for us. That will work for you too, if that's something that you're interested in. So if that's you, then go to antifragileentrepreneurship.co.workshop, and you can get all the latest workshop information and details there.
Well, guys, I'm a huge podcast guy. I love that she's bringing this, spreading this. She gave you so many free resources. It's incredible. Courtney, I so appreciate you coming on, sharing your story. This applies to everyone. Everyone has going to deal with adversity, and the whole anti-fragility. I love that take. It's beautiful. So thank you for sharing.
JM, thanks for having me. This has been great.
You guys share this, please. Let's get the word out about Effortless Life, about, her podcast. She has an amazing story. She clearly overcame things, and she's teaching others to do it as well. Share this with someone you love, because somebody's dealt with some adversity. They're probably going through it right now. And so much of what Courtney said, it's applicable. It's helpful to you today. Until next time, remember, your mindset matters. I appreciate you all. We'll talk very soon.